I've been wanting to ask this question through many webinars, and I think I've maybe even asked it in different forms, but in meditation, when I'm trying to get into this place, and I'm dropping down, and it seems to me, and I think maybe this is a false belief, but it seems to me if I'm truly in my natural being, that I would not remember it or know anything about it on this relatively aware state. And
you're right, girl. The mind cannot know anything about being.
The mind cannot know. So how can we even talk about it? We've had all these questions about
because it. Because being knows itself. Take the actor John Smith, who plays the part of King Lear. King Lear doesn't know anything about John Smith, because everything King Lear knows is filtered through and appears in accordance with the limitations of King Lear. So everything that King Lear looks at is tainted with King Lear's limitations. So King Lear cannot know John Smith because he's looking at John Smith through the glasses of King Lear. Mm-hmm. Everything that King Lear looks at is tinted with the glasses King Lear, tinted with King Lear's limitations. However, but John Smith knows John Smith by himself. So consciousness is the same. Everything consciousness knows through the finite mind. In the human being, the finite mind consists of thinking and perceiving. So everything consciousness knows through the finite mind is tainted with and appears in accordance with the limitations of that finite mind.
Right.
So the finite mind, consciousness cannot know itself through the finite mind. It's like looking at white snow through orange-tinted glasses. But consciousness doesn't need to know it, doesn't need to know itself through the finite mind. It knows the world through the finite mind, but it knows itself by itself. Consciousness's knowledge of itself is immediate, unmediated. It's the only direct experience consciousness has. Every other experience that consciousness has is mediated through the limitations of the finite mind and appears in accordance with those limitations. When consciousness looks at the world through a finite mind, seeing, hearing, touching, tasting, and smelling, surprise, surprise, the world appears as sights, sounds, tastes, textures, and smells. Not because there are any sights, sounds, tastes, textures, and smells out there. It's because of the medium through which it looks, the human mind. But it doesn't look at itself. It cannot look at itself through the human mind, but it doesn't need to. It knows itself. It's self-luminous. It's like the sun. It knows itself by itself. So that's why we are able to talk about consciousness's knowledge of itself, because we, consciousness, know ourself. It's our most fundamental, obvious, intimate, familiar experience, only we overlook it because we're so busy paying attention to other things.
Okay, but to talk about it,
but
we use
You're
our
absolutely right. So that's why you've heard me say a number of times this week, it's impossible to speak the absolute truth, right, because we're using, our language has evolved to describe the experience that the finite mind has.
Right.
So we're now trying to use that clumsy language, which was evolved to describe objective experience. We're now trying to use the same experience to describe our subjective experience of ourself. So that's why we tend to use, that's why I've said it's more important to be evocative than to be accurate. We want to speak accurately about our subjective experience of ourselves. All we can say is, I am. But if we want to speak evocatively, to try and evoke the quality of our subjective experience of ourselves, then we can use words like transparent and silent and empty and luminous. And these are not accurate, but they're words that are borrowed. We say from objective experience, empty, like an empty space, luminous, like the sun. Mm-hmm. But then we use those words to try and evoke, when we say consciousness is luminous, we mean that it It illuminates experience, or it knows experience. When we say consciousness is spacious, we mean to evoke the feeling that everything arises in consciousness. So you're right, we're using these rather clumsy words to try and describe something for which they weren't really just intended to do. Or we just break into poetry, where we give up trying to describe, we just try to evoke irrationally the taste of our own being that we're trying to draw attention to.
Okay, so now when I'm going deep and I have a thought about it.
Bring the mic closer.
I have a thought about it.
Yeah.
Like, I'm relaxing, or I'm, just to even be aware of it. I'm thinking.
That's the mind commentating.
Right.
On that, that's
so
fine. But you want to keep on sinking.
So you just keep on, but then you get to a place, I would think, that I would not be able to even remember it, nor it was
you're
there.
right. You can't remember it. Yes.
Right.
Yes. Because there's nothing there to remember.
Right.
Yes. You can't remember it.
So is that the goal?
But you don't need to remember it
Right.
because it's present now. You don't need to remember what the experience of consciousness is like because you are now having the experience of being aware.
Right.
You have to remember,
Yeah,
if you want to remember breakfast, you have to go to your memory of it.
Right.
Because breakfast is not present now. But the experience of being, is there anyone in this room who is not currently having the experience of being aware? We're all having the experience of being aware. We can access that experience directly. We don't have to refer to our memory to access it.
Okay.
And nor can we remember that experience because every memory takes place in the finite mind, and everything the finite mind knows is conditioned by the limitations of the finite mind. So you cannot remember consciousness because all memories are by definition temporary and finite. Mm-hmm. So it's impossible to remember consciousness or see consciousness or to know consciousness with the finite mind. But we don't need to, because consciousness is self-luminous. It's like the sun. It illuminates itself. It knows itself just by being itself. You are now having the experience of being aware, yeah?
Absolutely.
Or what do you think it is that is having the experience of being aware?
Yeah.
Whatever it is that is having the experience of being aware must itself be aware.
Right.
So the fact that you can say, yes, I am having the experience of being aware, you're acknowledging that I am aware that I am aware. Right there, that is consciousness's knowledge of itself. There's nothing extraordinary or mystical about it. It's the most obvious, intimate, familiar experience there, if we can call it an experience, there is. Consciousness is knowing itself all the time. Consciousness cannot not know itself for the same reason that the sun cannot not illuminate itself. Can you imagine the sun ceasing to illuminate itself? How would it do that? Its nature is illumination. Well, consciousness's nature is knowing. It cannot not know itself. It's eternally knowing or illuminating itself. Only its knowledge of itself is mixed up most of the time with its knowledge of other things, and therefore it tends to overlook or forget itself. Mm-hmm. But even when consciousness seems to be totally immersed in its knowledge of the world, it is still knowing itself, although its knowledge of itself has receded so far into the background that it seems not to know itself.
Okay, so even though there are thoughts during meditation, I'm always aware. I'm always in my
awareness
myself.
are eternally aware of yourself for the same reason that the sun is always illuminating itself. Right. Even when that part of the earth on which you are standing turns itself away from the sun at nighttime, so the earth is in darkness, but the sun is always luminous. Whatever is taking place in your mind, however dark or agitated it may be, consciousness, the essence of your mind, is always eternally knowing itself.
Okay. That helps a lot, even though I've heard it a lot of times. Thank you.